When I first transferred to Ridgefield High, I didn't think much about the rumors. Every school has its ghost stories, right? A bathroom mirror that screams, a janitor who never left, or a haunted locker that opens by itself. But at Ridgefield, everyone whispered about room 39. It was an old classroom at the end of the west hallway, the part of the school that had been sealed off for years. The paint was peeling, the lights flickered, and a heavy wooden door stood locked, chained, and covered in a "Do Not Enter" sign. No one used that corridor anymore. Even the teachers avoided it. On my first day, I accidentally walked too far down the wrong hallway and ended up right in front of room 39. The air felt colder there, not just a few degrees, but freezing. I reached out to touch the handle. It was ice cold. "Don't," a voice said behind me. I turned around. A girl about my age stood there, pale, serious eyes, long dark hair. "You shouldn't touch that door," she said. "Why not?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "Because," she looked around nervously, "they never found her." Before I could ask who she meant, the bell rang, and she walked away fast, disappearing into the crowd. At lunch, I asked around about room 39. Most students either ignored me or changed the subject. One guy, Tyler, finally leaned in and said quietly, "Dude, don't bring that up. A girl disappeared in there years ago. They say the teacher went crazy after it happened. Administration sealed the room. Teachers don't talk about it anymore." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Disappeared? Inside a classroom? How was that even possible? The next morning, I went back to that hallway again, this time deliberately. I had to see for myself. The chain around the door had rusted, and a faint smell of dust and mold filled the air. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks from the other side. I stumbled back, heart pounding. No one was supposed to be in there. But when I looked closer at the door again, something made my stomach twist. Scratched deep into the wood, barely visible under the dust, were 3 words. "Let me out." I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message burned into my mind. Let me out. Maybe it was a prank, I tried to tell myself. Maybe some kids scratched it there years ago. But the knocks, they were real. I heard them. The next day, I tried to act normal in class, but I couldn't focus. My eyes kept drifting toward the windows, to that dark corner of the school I now knew too well. After lunch, I finally decided to ask someone who might actually know the truth, Mr. Coleman, the history teacher. He'd been at Ridgefield for over 20 years. If anyone remembered what happened in room 39, it was him. When I asked, though, his face went pale. "Who told you about that?" "No one," I lied. "I just saw the door and wondered." "You shouldn't wonder." He cut me off sharply. "That room is closed for a reason. Don't go near it again, Adam. Do you understand?" There was something in his tone. Fear, not anger. And that made me even more curious. Later that afternoon, when the final bell rang, I stayed behind. The hallways emptied, the lights dimmed, and the janitor's cart squeaked faintly somewhere far off. I crept back to the west corridor. Room 39 was waiting, still locked, still chained. But the silence this time wasn't empty. It was alive. It was like the air was holding its breath. I leaned closer again, and that's when I heard it. Whispers. Faint, like voices carried through water. I pressed my ear against the cold door. The words were muffled but urgent. A girl's voice. "Please. He's still here. Help me." My skin crawled. I stepped back quickly, but my shoe hit something on the floor. A small folded piece of paper, yellow with age. It must have slipped from under the door. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, written in fading pencil, were just 3 words. "Don't trust him." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was him? And how did a note that old end up moving under a locked door? The next morning, I noticed Mr. Coleman wasn't in class. Someone said he called in sick, for the first time in years. And as I passed the west hallway again, I could swear I heard the same whisper, closer this time. "Adam." By the next morning, my curiosity had turned into obsession. The whispers, the message on the door, the note. They all circled in my head like a warning I couldn't ignore. I needed answers. So during lunch, I went to the school library hoping to find something, old yearbooks, newspapers, anything about room 39. The librarian, Mrs. Harris, looked confused when I asked. "That room's been closed for a long time," she said. "Why are you asking?" I shrugged. "Just research." She sighed, then went to the back office. When she returned, she carried a dusty old yearbook labeled 1999. "Be careful with this," she said, sliding it across the desk. "It's the last record we have before the West Wing was sealed." Flipping through the pages, I found something that made my stomach drop. A class photo. Room 39. And in the middle of the back row, a smiling girl with long dark hair and a bright blue ribbon. Underneath, her name was written. Emily Cross. The same girl who had warned me not to touch the door. I froze. I'd seen her, just 2 days ago in that same hallway. But this photo was from 26 years ago. My hands trembled as I turned the page, and something slipped out from between the pages. A folded piece of paper, old and stained. It looked exactly like the one I'd found outside room 39. When I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just a note. It was a detention slip. Student, Emily Cross. Date, November 13th, 1999. Teacher, Mr. Coleman. Reason, after-school detention, room 39. My heart started pounding. Mr. Coleman? That couldn't be right. My Mr. Coleman was the same one who taught history now. He didn't look that old, maybe mid-40s. But if he'd been teaching back then, that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every noise in the dark made me flinch. At around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. Only one line. "You shouldn't have found that." And attached a photo. It showed me standing outside room 39 from just a few hours earlier. But there was someone else in the picture too. A shadow standing behind me inside the classroom. After that message, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Someone knew I'd found the note. Someone was watching me. But who took that photo? And how? The next morning, I confronted Mr. Coleman. He was back at school, pale and tired looking, his voice weaker than before. "Mr. Coleman," I said, holding up the old detention slip I'd found. "Did you teach a girl named Emily Cross?" For a long moment, he just stared at the paper in my hand. Then he said quietly, "Throw that away, Adam. Forget everything you think you've found." His hand trembled. He looked terrified. "Why?" I asked. "What happened to her?" He hesitated, then whispered, "She stayed after school for detention. But when I came back the next morning," he stopped himself. "Please," he said, almost begging, "leave it alone." But it was too late for that. That night, I stayed after school. I waited until the hallways were empty, then crept back to the west corridor. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing faintly. The chain on room 39 was still there, but loose. Someone had been tampering with it. I hesitated for a second, then lifted it off. The door creaked open slowly, releasing a gust of air that smelled like old paper and rot. Inside, the classroom looked frozen in time. Desks covered in dust, chalk still faintly scribbled on the board. "Detention 3 p.m. Emily." My flashlight flickered. The walls were covered in faint, hand-shaped smudges, like someone had tried to claw their way out. And then, from the corner, I heard it. The same whisper, but clearer this time. "Adam, please help me." "Emily?" I called, my voice shaking. The door slammed behind me. The flashlight went out. Pitch black. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. I fumbled to turn my light back on, and when it finally flicked to life, I froze. At the front of the class stood a figure. A man, tall, wearing an old teacher's coat, his eyes black and hollow. He smiled. "Detention's not over yet," he said. Before I could move, every desk in the room began to shake violently. Chairs scraping across the floor, papers flying in circles like a storm. The whisper turned into screams. I lunged for the door, but it wouldn't open. The chain had somehow wrapped itself around the handle again. And then, right next to my ear, I heard Emily's voice, soft and broken. "He never let me leave either." I slammed against the door, desperate to escape, but it wouldn't budge. The room pulsed with a cold, unnatural energy, like the walls themselves were alive. The figure at the front, Mr. Coleman or whatever he had become, moved slowly toward me. His eyes weren't human anymore. Black pits with faint red glimmers, like embers in a dead fireplace. "Why are you here?" I stammered, my voice shaking. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice echoing unnaturally, as if more than one person were speaking at once. I just wanted to know what happened to Emily," I shouted. His laugh was hollow, chilling. "She is still here, and she never left, just like the others." "Others?" "Yes," he whispered, leaning closer. "Every student who stayed after detention, every one of them, keep them here, forever. Classroom 39 is more than a room. It's a prison for the souls who disobey." The air grew heavy, and I felt invisible hands brushing my arms, pulling at my clothes. I spun, shining my flashlight around, and saw them, faint, ghostly figures of kids, some smiling, some crying silently, trapped inside the walls, frozen in fear. Emily's face appeared among them, eyes wide, mouth moving silently. "Help!" I tried the door again, still locked. "Why?" I demanded. "Why do this?" Mr. Coleman tilted his head. "Because they needed to learn. Disobedience has a cost, and some lessons never end." Panic surged through me. I could feel the spirits reaching for me, their cold fingers brushing my skin. I remembered the note, "Don't trust him," and I realized too late that the warning had been for me. The shadows swirled around, whispering, screaming. I ran to the back of the classroom, trying to find another exit. That's when I noticed it, a small hidden panel in the corner. I pried it open and found a narrow crawl space, just big enough to squeeze through. The whispers screamed in my ears, warning me, pleading with me. I crawled through, scraping my hands on splintered wood, my heart hammering. Behind me, I could hear Mr. Coleman's laughter echoing through the walls, and then silence. I emerged in the janitor's storage room, gasping for air, covered in dust and sweat. The normal world felt unreal. I stumbled out of the school, vowing never to go back. But I knew the truth. Room 39 still existed. Emily was still trapped. And Mr. Coleman, the teacher who never left, was still waiting. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about room 39. I had escaped, yes, but something wasn't right. The school seemed quieter than usual. The hallways emptier. I went to the office, hoping to put the nightmare behind me, when the secretary looked up and asked nervously, "Adam, have you seen the CCTV footage from yesterday?" "What footage?" I asked. She hesitated, then handed me a small USB drive. "They're letting you watch it," she whispered. "But maybe you shouldn't." Curiosity won. I plugged it in. The footage showed the west hallway, starting around 3:10 p.m. First, nothing unusual. Students leaving, teachers walking by. Normal. Then, the camera slowly panned toward room 39. The door, still chained, shivered, like something was pushing from inside. Then, the door creaked open, slowly, impossibly, with no one near it. I froze as the camera caught it. Inside, Mr. Coleman was standing in the middle of the room. But he wasn't alone. The walls were crawling with shadows, ghostly children pressed against the peeling paint. Their eyes glowed faintly in the camera's infrared. And in the middle, Emily Cross, her face pale, eyes wide, mouth moving silently, screaming without sound. Then Mr. Coleman turned to the camera. His face, it wasn't human anymore. He smiled, and he whispered, "You shouldn't have seen this." Suddenly, all the shadows lunged toward the door. The chain snapped, the door slammed shut, and the camera feed went black. I dropped the USB drive. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely stand. The secretary's eyes were wide. They say the police checked the camera, she said softly. But there's no footage, just static. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house made me jump. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A text. Next time you stay after. I deleted the message, but deep down I knew the warning wasn't over. Room 39 wasn't just a classroom. It was waiting. And somewhere in the shadows, Mr. Coleman was still smiling.